Good morning, San Francisco. Buen dia. Welcome to Free Talk SF, freetalksf.com. My name is Steven Zeiler. I am ecstatic to announce that you can be listening to Free Talk SF right now on 88.1 KGay. That's right. There is a new liberty-oriented radio station in the heart of San Francisco, and the operators of that station have graciously agreed to put this show on the air. So you can be hearing this across the airwaves on the old school analog radio. That's 88.1 KGay. And this is Free Talk SF, a show dedicated to freedom, empathy, and independence for everyone in San Francisco. Now, of course, you know that I love Bitcoin and I love independent money. And the reason is I want independence for everyone. I want people to be able to take more control of their personal lives, and for us as a city in San Francisco to be able to take more personal control of our economy, of our dependencies. And I think that starts at the money level. With the US dollar, we're all, well, anyone who uses the US dollar and is investing or in the financial system, they're so beholden to what the central bank, the Federal Reserve, says. And the Federal Reserve, though they think they have tons of power, really just muck with the markets until the markets force themselves to readjust. And there's always booms and crashes, and that's always highlighted so well in Silicon Valley and here in San Francisco, what the booms and the crashes can be like. So I advocate independent money. I think money controlled by the people here in San Francisco, money that's more decentralized. I think a lot of startups, companies here would love to be able to store their money in San Francisco itself, in Silicon Valley, not have to depend on the New York, London, global financial center banks for their funds, and to be able to actually control it as a community here rather than some external parties controlling our money supply. And that gets me into Bitcoin and gold. Gold, if you don't know, of course, has been around for the last 5,000 years or so, used as money. And gold is excellent as money, especially because people can hold it and have independent assurance and wealth that can't be confiscated remotely, like a lot like a bank account. I would love to see people using gold. And the one problem, though, that Bitcoin has especially presented. Well, let's see. Here in San Francisco, there used to be gold vaults all over the place. This was the heart of the California gold rush. And there were, like, you walk around town and there's all these old buildings with big columns and pillars. And they're like, some of them were like the old gold bank of the West or something. Now, none of them store gold anymore. There's an old mint that used to store a bunch of gold, which is now like a venue for parties. We had our company holiday party in the old mint, danced inside the empty vault that used to store gold. There's my gym used to have it used to store gold down in the basement. There was a giant vault, which is now the locker room. And so it seems that people have moved away from gold. The reason that people moved away from gold is several-fold. One, reasonable market reasons why people would want paper and then digital forms of money. They're more divisible, more easily transportable, at the same time more controllable and exploitable. And also, gold was made illegal in the United States. At least everyone was ordered to turn their gold into the Federal Reserve Bank in 1933 by executive order from Le Président. And so people stopped using gold, and in the 1970s and 80s, gold was re-legalized and people were allowed to own gold again. And there's been a huge surge in gold ownership, but not nearly as much as it used to be. And at the same time, we're seeing people in San Francisco unable to keep up with the rising inflation that's occurred and the devaluation of their money that's occurred because of the giant money printing. And one especially cogent example of that is the price of housing. In terms of dollars, the price of housing here in the Bay Area has pushed out a lot of people who may have been saving their money over the decades in dollars just to watch them wither away and not be worth enough to maintain their house, and now they're being forced out of the city. Now, of course, a lot of this is demand for housing. A lot of this demand for housing is driven by money fueled from the recent giant quadrupling of the money supply. I keep getting back to gold because it's an excellent independent way to store wealth. And I think now we're right on the cusp where we can actually start to use gold and other hard assets again as money because we have the digital technology to do so. The digital technology to use gold as money, it has been proposed and tried out a few times since 1995, the advent of the World Wide Web. So that was 20 years ago. And since then, we've gone through a lot of periods where companies tried to create some type of online gold storage where they maintain an account of who owns what gold. And the problem is a lot of those databases of who owns what gold were subject to manipulation by the owner of the database. They were closed. They were not. No one could check. There wasn't verifiable ability to know where your gold was, and it caused problems. The state was not very happy with some of these operations. I think there were some scams, some legitimate things, and on a lot of them, the state cracked down. But now we're in an age where we have new technology that can prevent a lot of the issues that there were with previous gold-based digital systems. We have technology where the accounting, the ledger, where everyone's gold balances is stored, can be stored in a database that's not operated by any particular agency or company, where the storage of the person who stores the gold and the person who owns the gold are not, neither of them, the person who maintains the ledger of who owns how much gold. And so we're getting to a point where these different roles can be decentralized, and where we have global digital services that are available to everyone and that are auditable and provable. But these digital services at the same time are not controlled by a central company. and thus are not subject to a lot of exploits that were possible before. At the same time, we have cryptography that allows people to control their own funds and their own information, as very well demonstrated by Bitcoin. The cryptography in Bitcoin allows people, individual normal people, to have absolute control over their coins and their assets, and they have an irrefutable identity that allows them to manage their digital assets without permission from any third party. This is excellent for liberty, and particularly excellent for independence for all people. Now, it would be wonderful if normal people would be able to hold assets and save in something that isn't going to be inflated, but also save in something that doesn't support a New York, Washington, London financial system, which has been in the long-term habit of funding incredibly atrocious wars. And I'm sure you know as well as I do that we don't need a federal government to run our lives, and that Silicon Valley and San Francisco in particular can take care of ourselves, and we can trade with other areas. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because of recent efforts by the mafia, the state of California mafia, to prohibit the use of virtual currency. And what they want to do is establish a license inspired by the state of New York license, the BIT license. Some people in California have proposed legislation by the state to create a license and create restrictions on who can operate who can use virtual currency even. Now, we know that by using virtual currency, cryptocurrency in particular, the state can't actually stop you from using it. That's one great thing about cryptocurrency. The state can't stop you, but if you are a business, the state might claim that they can require you to do certain things. So this California BIT license, I want to tell you about it. The California BIT license claims that you must have this license to do business dealing in virtual currency. Now, it's not one big problem I have, first of all, is if we want to be prosperous, people need to be independent and not ask for permission to do things that enhance their communities and their lives. Autonomy is a huge component of independence, and not having to ask permission, or not seeking permission, will go a long way into establishing a culture of freedom. Now, this one big thing a big problem I have with this California BIT license, it is fairly vague, but they're not taking into account normal people who want to be able to use digital services and digital goods who may accidentally come under this system. So now the thing is, there are companies that can afford this license, no problem. And in the past, it may have been extremely expensive to run software systems. I'm talking hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to run software. But now people can create software systems for dozens of dollars, and all kinds of awesome innovation is occurring because of that. The California bit license would, first of all, require a $5,000 non-refundable fee to the state. So let's examine this $5,000 non-refundable fee. First of all, the state, we should not be supporting, or rather, to send money and have our businesses sending capital to the state, in this case $5,000 non-refundable, is funding an organization that's essentially based on the threat of coercion and compulsion via prisons and guns, and the threat of death, of murder for non-compliance. All state policies are backed up by the barrel of a gun, which ultimately leads to an incredibly violent society, if not on the surface, an undercurrent of death and destruction that underpins all of the so-called, quote, regulations in the. I think that a free economy of individuals who are independent and care about each other would not allow their rules and regulations to be based in any way. So first of all, I would like no application fee, because there are a lot of people, especially young people, who have incredibly good ideas, who don't have $5,000. I know it doesn't sound like all that much for a big business to spend $5,000, but a small startup trying to launch a service, to be forced to have to spend $5,000 basically will destroy a ton of ideas. Now, maybe the state could try to be more market-like. Maybe they could try to compete in the certification space. There are companies here in San Francisco who certify people and companies for various things. Certify that you can run this particular type of software. Certify that you know this much math. Certify that you are compliant with some third-party standards for health in your restaurant, or certified by Zagat. It'd be nice if the state would, at most, try to compete in this certification market. Maybe offer the California Bit Certificate, where if you follow all of the guidelines provided by the state of California, then you can be issued the official State of California certificate, which, though not required to operate a business, people who trust in the state's judgment authority will be able to safely and happily patronize that business, knowing that they have passed all the rigorous checks of the state of California. Wouldn't that be great? That would be a system based on mutual understanding rather than on coercion. And then the rest of the people who actually don't trust the state of California as a certifying authority don't need to trust that, and they can seek out their own alternatives, or not. They could be totally unlicensed and upfront with their customers that they don't have a license and that they have certain security properties and there are certain risks. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be upfront with my customers. I'm going to tell them about the security properties of the system and the risk that they're taking by using the system, and the risk that they're taking by using something that may or may not have a certification of any kind. I think it would be best for my company to seek out third-party certification, but also be extremely upfront with the customers. Okay, so this bit license, it requires, first of all, it's not guaranteed to be granted to anyone. So here's not much equal treatment under the law. The commissioner has full discretion to accept or deny any application. But regardless of whether you're accepted or not, you do have to pay the $5,000 fee just to be included. Then you have to include several years of financial statements and audits. Some things that a lot of people don't have. You have to provide letters of recommendation from your local government. And then you also have to provide any and all information about your business that the commissioner deems necessary at any time and also at specified times throughout the year, or else your license will be revoked. I want to empathize with, well, the type of people that I don't normally try to empathize with are these state regulators. I think the state regulators could benefit a lot by empathizing with people who want to create cool things but don't have a lot of money, and people who don't create cool things because they're afraid of the law, of arbitrary edicts by some commissioner somewhere in Sacramento. You can feel the fear of people being repressed by even the idea of a required license. You talk to people and they are hesitant and afraid, not because the product may be insecure, but because they think the state is going to crack down on them for using something that's not allowed. Now, let's be perfectly clear. Virtual currencies, digital cryptocurrencies are completely legal in America, according to many government bodies, though it doesn't matter. Decide for yourself what is good and what is bad and use it accordingly. That's the way we build real independent communities. So this bit license, fortunately, it was shot down in some committee or other in Sacramento. So it is going away until early next year, when it may come back up. But there is just really no reason. There's already layers and layers of regulation and requirements for companies that transmit money, all of which need to be repealed as soon as possible. And this new legislation is not necessary. So it will be back. Be warned. It's gone for now, but it will be back in January. Now, I had a list of companies that are in favor of the California bit license, and I wish I had them right here. I had it, but notable companies were Coinbase and BitPay, as well as Circle, I believe. And these are, on the contrary, there were a lot of Bitcoin companies that are opposed to the California bit license, and they have a better time empathizing with smaller, less official people, or people with less power and control already, who want to make a life for themselves. Now, I can feel these regulators. You know, they're afraid. They have what they feel is a mandate by the legislature or the quote the people to do the will of the legislature and the powers that fund the members of the legislature, and they're afraid, likely, that if they don't do what the powers that fund the legislature says, they're going to lose their livelihood. They're probably going to lose their job. And it can't be good for them. They're also looking, what if they stand up to the FedGov and something bad happens to them for doing that? If they're non-compliant with the FedGov regulations. So I would like to see, well, first of all, I would like to see the city of San Francisco come out and explicitly say that independent people and businesses in San Francisco do not need a license to transact with people in San Francisco or anyone in the world. That is a right that San Franciscans can benefit incredibly from, especially to establish a peaceful set of regulations that are agreed upon by the people and voluntarily entered into, rather than enforced from the top down. So San Francisco can, just like the way the San Francisco police are ordered by the mayor, I believe, to not enforce any ICE immigration edicts or requirements. Basically, they will not deport people who ICE claim are illegal. Of course, borders are not real. Borders are arbitrary lines. And so the local San Francisco administration has prevented ICE, the federal agency, from working their magic damage. And the same thing can happen with digital currency and with our money. People in San Francisco need to be free to create and use our own money without restriction and without having to ask anyone. So the city of San Francisco can officially say they will not use their policing authority to enforce any state regulations on companies or people regarding transactions and commerce, especially in virtual currency. I would also like to see the state of Jefferson legislature come out with a resolution that commerce and transactions and all currency and all market-based money is completely free to use, requires no reporting to the state of Jefferson, and businesses will be welcome and protected in Jefferson from roving bands of thieves from the state of California, in the case that they try to attack any businesses in Jefferson. So I have good hope for Jefferson and for San Francisco, and I think that we can have positive legislation which enshrines and encodes freedoms. Though again, every person has freedom to do what they want and to do what they think will make their community a more prosperous place. So we have companies that are supporting this BIT license. The reason they support this is it's something called regulatory capture, where once a company has established itself as a market leader, it can then move to use the mafia enforcement agencies to prevent competition from entering into the space and taking over their market share. This is obvious with the case of Coinbase and BitPay, where they designed the rules in concert with the legislature and then rushed to implement the rules themselves first, then have the legislature propose the rules that would prevent a lot of their competitors from quickly entering in the space and innovating. Okay. Well, if you didn't know, this broadcast is licensed under a BIPCOT no-gov license. That means it's free to use by anyone except governments and government agents. So if you are one of those government agents, this is not an appropriate use. So please stop listening now. For everyone else, feel free to share and reuse. One last thing I wanted to get to. So there's these this bit license, and it's dead. It's shut down. That's good for now. And we'll see how many people comply anyway. But some of these companies have also proposed something for a lot of this compliance has to do with something called Know Your Customer, where ostensibly, in order to prevent fraud, a company needs to understand the identity of their customer. And this means usually gathering a bunch of unnecessary government documents that attest to the identity of a person. And a lot of companies have been working with universities to create a new type of personal identity. And the proposal is called the Hanover Principles. This, I think, is a very intriguing idea. A lot of people are against this. It may be knee-jerk reactions. They may have good points. The Hanover Principles state, well, it's a new way to control your identity where individual people have independent control of their own identity online and are freely able to move it and withdraw it as they please. This is really interesting. So these are some things that we can use cryptography to build that will become irrefutable and fundamental pieces of the new internet architecture. Let me read some of the top the points of the Hanover Principles. 1, self-sovereign identity and enrollment. Through their own behaviors and biometrics, individuals should be able to generate a unique core identity signature through an open source platform that is stored in an encrypted cloud under the control of the individual or a designated third party. Self-sovereign identity. That's what I'm talking about. Rather than your identity being controlled by a corporation or a government, to be able to control your own using cryptographic keys is tantalizing, to say the least. 2, total mobility of core identity credentials and personal data. 3, right of individual to have control and copy of their personal data. Every individual has the right to have multiple contextual identities. Data minimization and anonymization for sharing data. This all seems really great. So what this is going to enable is for people to be able to assure someone else that they are a reasonably safe person to interact with. So, for instance, on Uber, Uber, the decentralized taxi service, you have to provide your identity to Uber in order for them to ensure or have some assurance that you were a real person or a reasonable person, and to be able to block you if necessary. Now, it would be great if we could just tell Uber, if we could assure Uber that we were a reasonable person, safe enough to transact with, without having to disclose personal identity information other than like our first name, right? But if we could prove cryptographically that we were trustworthy, or that we were over a certain age, according to some authority, then we wouldn't have to divulge a bunch of our information. The great thing about virtual cryptocurrencies is you don't have to divulge any information about your bank account or your credit card or your payment. You just pay using cryptography, which ensures the payment will go through without any identity attached. But people will want identity. Now, some of these principles I have a problem with. So, and a lot of times it's because of the reality of cryptography. So, right of law enforcement to identify individuals. That is contrary also to individual control over data held by third parties. So, if you want individual control over data, then it follows that no third party can have access to that data. Otherwise, any third party could gain access to that data. So it's compromising the security to enable one person to have a backdoor, because then anyone could take advantage of that backdoor. But I find this Hanover principles fascinating. Something that we've been working on at Ripple Labs and thinking about a lot is identity, and especially self-sovereign identity that can be portable and verifiable by different trusted parties. I think that's interesting. That's something that some of the California BitLicense proponents are also proposing. So it might not be all that good. Something more to examine. And of course, all of this is in an effort to make individual people in San Francisco more independent and free. And we can achieve that by empathizing with everyone, especially the people who are less fortunate. How are they going to be affected? What jobs are not going to be created for them because of regulation like this? All right. It's been fun. I'm glad to be back on Free Talk SF. Super excited to be broadcasting on 88.1 KGay in San Francisco. As always, be free and be independent. Empathize with people around you. And of course, dance like no one's watching. And encrypt like everyone's watching, because they're trying to gain business advantage over you. They are trying to put you in a box and predict your behavior. They are trying to regulate you out of existence. So encrypt. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Free Talk SF. My name is Steven Zeiler. Until next time, have a fabulous day.